for our session. I don't want to delay it anymore.
After this session, this is what you are suggesting. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
That's the right way. Show
Okay.
has to go on. Continue.
Okay. So we start with the good note. Okay. Namaskar, and I welcome you all to this keynote session, where we shall hear the talk from a very distinguished panelist, Shri Sushil Kumar Ji Soni, who is ascribed to have given new dimensions to the power system in India. His contribution in the sector is unmatched, and he is responsible for leading a number of initiatives in this sector, starting from design and implementation of system operation schemes to market mechanism to creation of the institutions to take the sector forward. One of his latest contribution in this regard is the start of LDC award, which for the first time was conducted yesterday, and his contribution in this regard is unique. Though I am sure that he does not need any introduction, still to discharge my duties, I shall share some of the details concerning him, which have been provided to me from ICPS side. Suni Saab has more than 4 decades of experience in power system operation of various regional grids of India and has worked extensively towards integration of states grids to form regional grids of national grid and now SERC grid. He specializes in power system operation, planning, commercial, settlement, restoration, and the entire gamut of the power pooling and governance. Other areas of interest include electricity market, open access and regulatory affairs, besides expertise in load dispatch technology, integration of renewable energy, including REC mechanism, transmission pricing, and the development of ancillary services. He is a life fellow of Institution of Engineers, Fellow of IEEE, Fellow INAE, Distinguished Elements, IIT Kharagpur, Distinguished Member SIGRE, former member NAE USA. He has represented India on the SIGRE Study Committee C2 on Power System Operation and currently represents India on the SIGRE Study Committee C5 on Electricity Markets and Regulation. He is the former and founder CEO of POSCO, and I also have the fortune to have directly worked under his supervision for a considerable period and learned a lot from his experience. I can go on, however, to save the time, I'll stop here. And Soni Saab has given a recorded presentation. So Soni Saab, you would like to say a few words before that, or we should go with your presentation? I leave it to you, Soni Saab. Floor is now available to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal, for a very generous introduction. And thanks everyone, though we are not able to see who all are attending, but thank you for attending this. It's a topic not very conventional one, but in order to save energy and be in time, I would prefer let the recorded version go on. And then purposely, we have shortened the recorded version so that we can have more of questions. My request to the attendees is that please be liberal. You don't have to be very apologetic. Put sharp and focused questions, and let's see if we can answer them. And if I can't answer, Mr. Agarwal is there to answer them. Thank you so much. Let's have the video recording, please.
Srishti, we can start with the recorded version.
Nitesh, please start the recording.
And in the meantime, Srishti, if you can tell the attendees number at least.
Yes, sir. I'll let you know, sir.
Yeah, or maybe through chat box you can.
Yeah, in next 5 minutes, I'll let you know, sir, because just the session started. So the people are still joining the sessions. I'll let you know, sir.
Okay.
82. Yeah, 82 people are attending, sir, right now.
This is what we were telling.
Yes, sir. Like it's always your sessions will be very engaging, sir. So yesterday also, like it always be a very good number of people attending your session. So like we have 200 registrations. So in that, like around 80-85 people are attending right now, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us start, Srishti.
Yes, sir. Nitesh.
It may be in 3 figures by now, I understand.
Yes, sir. Just give a minute. I'll 1 second, sir.
Greetings. Thanks, ICP. For giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on governance aspects of Indian power system. In past ICPS and NPSC, we shared thoughts on continuum in Indian power system, flexibility in Indian power system, diversity in Indian power system. And in this session, we would share some thoughts on practical governance aspects of Indian power system. I must thank my POSOCO team and the young enthusiasts who have helped me in assembling these thoughts, particularly Sri Pawan, Sri Samir, and many of them. So let's start with how the governance has been there since ancient times. Be it Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Vidur Niti, Arthasastra of Kautilya, everybody has talked about governance. And so is governance important in power system. It takes care of accountability, transparent, responsive, equitable and inclusive, efficient and effective, follows the rule of the law, participatory and consensus oriented. And it is bounded rationality. So in the happiness of the subject lies the king's happiness. In their welfare, his welfare. He shall not consider as good only that which pleases him, but treat as beneficial to him whatever pleases his subjects. This is the motto of the governance. Now, governance and institutions are interrelated. Institutions discharge governance, and it's an evolutionary process. I just tried to give a concept that there are seed ideas, there are conceptual inceptions, and then the legislators legislate, there is a law, there is an act, all encompassing, but that's like a stub. It doesn't have tree leaves and fruits and other things. So act has to be further articulated in terms of policy, regulations, rules, codes, procedures, and regulatory and judicial orders. That makes the tree complete, but still, when we start implementing, then there are amendments, there are new seed ideas, new laws, and new institutions develop. And that's how we get a full forest of various kinds of trees, fruits, and nurture all of them. This is what has happened in Indian power system also. A well-balanced, inclusive approach according to certain standards and ideals is essential for the proper governance of any country. So is it in the power system. Many a times, governance and regulations are mixed up. Governance is from within, whereas regulation is from outside. Governance, institutions and actors can be beyond government too. There is blurring of boundaries and responsibilities. Capacity to get things done without relying on the powers of the government is governance. Whereas regulation, it's a set of institutions and actors usually within the government only. They have fixed roles and responsibilities. They are not dependent on collective actions. They have to work within the rules and regulation in accordance with laws and statutes. With proper governance, life will improve for all. That's what the wise people have said. Now, this is a seed slide where we would try to map on the human society with electricity grid. Electricity grid or a power system is a manifestation of human society. What all goes on in a human society goes on in electricity grid. Not all the players are angels. There are rogue players, there are disciplined players. There are citizens of different size and shapes. So as grid elements, generators of various resource mix, the transmission elements, the distribution companies, the consumer, the traders, the power exchange, they are all grid elements. And they all make the power system. Similar to what is government in human society, we have policymakers and planners. We have police and security for law and order. System operators are the last monopoly, and they are to ensure law and order. Similar to justice system, there are regulatory institutions, there are appellate tribunals and court of law to address problems of electricity grid also. Like citizens, we expect society to be following all law and orders. Quality should be good, electricity frequency should be good, there should be no congestion, and one should be able to do business. But similarly, society also expects something from the citizens, that they should be law-abiding, they should pay taxes, they should follow rules and regulations. So is in the grid. The grid expects that every grid element will follow the laws of the land or the rules and the regulations. While citizen protects his interests and argues very vociferously, some institutions have to also protect the interest of the society and similarly of power system. This is the basic thought process behind governance in power system. The way there is a trend in electricity from monopoly to market, the governance also has to change accordingly. Gone are those days where we had centralized generating systems, simple to operate, simple to govern. Now we have distributed generating stations. All of us know about it, prosumers, and hence governance assumes even more importance in power system. I must again quote from the wise people, good governance never depends upon laws, but upon the personal qualities of those who govern. The machinery of government is always subordinate to the will of those who administer that machinery. The most important element of government, therefore, is the method of choosing leaders. We need champions for power systems too. The importance of governance in power system is by raising few questions. Who decides? Who decides? How the decisions are made? And governance refers to all these aspects of how decisions are made and implemented within a society. Same is in the power system. Who triggers the changes? So there are roughly 4 different modes of governance. One is integration, proactive use of hierarchical structures. Second is coordination, voluntary engagements in coalition in order to develop things. Then there is a competition, optimizing the market competition, because we all know competition brings in efficiency. And that happens in society also. And then there is a coexistence. In Indian power system, we know it's a federal structure. So we have a central, which is interstate, and we have intrastate. So there are policymakers at the central level, Ministry of Power, MNRE. We have regulators at central level. So is the case with the state. Then we have generators. They have their jurisdiction, whether they come under interstate or intrastate. Same is with the transmission. Jurisdiction is extremely important. And in system operation also, it's not one system operator who operates the Indian power system. There are around 3 dozen system operators at national level, regional level, and state levels. And then there are distribution, hundreds of distribution entities who are part of this ecosystem of power system. And now a couple of dozens of traders and multiple power exchanges. And this is how the governance of power system becomes extremely important in Indian context because of its enormity. What happens if you have bad governance? Good versus bad governance and impact on power system. The way we have failed states where the governance has failed, similar in power system, if we have poor governance, there will be extreme difficulty in running the power system. There are issues of legitimacy. Every grid connected element should voluntarily recognize and follow the laws and responsibilities and authority. All stakeholders have equal level of access of information. Information asymmetry is very bad for the society and for the power system. Similarly, rule of the law, accountability, non-discriminatory applications of rules and regulations applied to all the grid connected entities, responsiveness and effectiveness. But again, good governance needs recalibrating. So it works in the public interest of all the world's citizens, not just for few. This is again the basic diktats and maxims of the good governance. On the policy process, institutions are extremely important. Legislative committees, executives, ministry department, planning agencies, capacity of civil society. They all help in policy processes. How policy formulation takes place, reforms and policy change process, availability of background information, debates, clarity of policy process, and media coverage. How well are we doing this is a sign of good governance. And then finally, of course, the implementation. Now, Dorothy Sayre says in The Mind of the Maker that the inconsistency and incompleteness of ideas only get manifested during implementation and interaction. The same thing happens in power system and in governance. Similarly, on the regulatory side, there are structures, authority, autonomy. Conflict of interest is extremely important. We are shy of talking about it, but those who are statutory organizations must ensure that there is least amount of conflict of interest. There are many definitions of conflict of interest. The best one I like is that when your interest is misaligned with public interest, chances of its happening is high and probability of its detection is low. That's what is conflict of interest. Information disclosure and transparency, the entire decision-making process, public participation, utility engagement, and how speaking orders, how the decisions are made is what we'll talk about governance. Somehow nowadays we find many regulations and orders. One does not know who has triggered and how these have been arrived at. So if it's a good governance, you will be able to participate in the whole process. And then, of course, during the training also, similar things have to be there. Now, there are layers and layers. Look at the left side picture. The end consumer is now prosumer. But there are many stakeholders, transmission licensee, distribution licensee, traders, power exchanges, then various kind of system operators, their rules, regulation, congestion management, ancillary services. Then there is a planning process, medium-term, long-term, connectivity regulations, and then there are regulations and regulations, plethora of regulations, and then there are, laws, and that too of states and center. This is the challenge. The end consumer is mostly mute. He doesn't know about all these things. But like a citizen, one expects good society, same is with power system. I just tried to list out the sections in Electricity Act 2003, starting from section 26 to section 110. The national load dispatch, regional load dispatch, state load dispatch, central transmission utility, state transmission utility. Then there are licensees, traders, market, central authority, regulatory commission at central level and state level, and there are certain joint commission, and finally appellate tribunal of electricity. In gist, governance is everything. Without governance, we have nothing. But it's very difficult to comprehend. It's a very complex system. Everything interacts with everything. Nobody is in full control and nobody knows the whole thing. So the idea here is to understand how the power system is governed in India. Over the last 50 years, or in fact more than that, the power system has evolved. Right from independence, at least for 25 to 30 years, there were statutory organizations, ACBs, REBs, of course, BBMB and DVC kind of an organization got created through Act, CPRI, training institutions. But then 75 onwards, there were many companies which came. Corporatization was the mantra, and we got NTPC, NHPC, PFC, and so many other organizations. 90s onwards, the regulatory commissions came in, CRC, SERCs, and so came the RLDCs and SLDCs. 2003 Act was the Watershed Act, and then we got what is APTEL and NLDC and power exchanges and traders and central transmission utility. It will keep evolving, and in future we would have distribution system operator, aggregator, and many more actors, particularly with renewables coming in and markets opening up. Good governance requires working towards common ground. It isn't easy. It isn't easy in society either. We see it day in, day out in politics. And same is with power system. Common ground, that's the point. Just to give you a feel of what happens in the governance, look at the way POSOCO has evolved. POSOCO was pre-1994 for a few decades was part of CEA. Then it was carved out and got attached with Power Grid Corporation, transmission company, and budgetary support stopped. And then inside the power grid, there was a ring fencing and regulatory commission stepped in. And then it became a wholly owned subsidiary of power grid. And finally, with the cabinet approval, it became an independent system operator. 2007 onwards, Schedule A company. There is a lot of literature available on this, but the moot point is that institution making takes time, particularly for making it sustainable institution. Public servant should be focused on serving the public, not any special interest group. And good governance should be an expectation, not an exception. And these institutions are supposed to meet the expectation of the society. And that's part of the good governance. Now I will say in 3 slides how this governance part is further articulated. For example, take the report of Samast. Like technology readiness level, we need market readiness also. This report provides a framework for establishing robust ecosystem for scheduling, accounting, metering, and settlement of transactions. It requires identification of pool members, interface boundaries, jurisdiction, how do we administer laws, dispute-free settlement, and energy accounting, and adequacy of human resources. We very frequently talk of resource adequacy, but so is it for human resource adequacy also, and IT infrastructure adequacy. Without that, you cannot have market which will flourish. Market analytical part or structural part is simple, implementation is difficult, and that's where governance again comes in. And in tomorrow, we will have many distribution system operator. So again, to quote, there should be only one political ideology, and that is good governance. And in fact, all the political ideologies finally should converge on good governance. I'm again and again repeating that this governance aspect is not much talked about, be it in academia and even industry. We mix it up with technical, we mix it up with regulatory and legal, but governance is a subject by itself which deserves due attention and due nurturing. Similarly, for reserves, ancillary services, all these niche products, you find a lot of literature on how the ancillary services and the reserve should be done. But what are the a priori which is required for these things to work? How the tariff systems are there, how imbalance and settlements from source to sink, who will pay to whom and for what has to be clearly known, then only things would work. How the computation of reserve quantum will be done, how the compensation would be paid for the reservation, how they would be incentivized. This is all what we have talked about in the report Santulan. It's part of the governance system. It is said, get healthy, get strong, get educated and informed, and start contributing to your own governance. But to get strong is very important. Get educated is very important. For good governance, we must have good educated and intrinsic capability inside the organization and inside the entire chain of organizations which will govern power system. Now, load dispatch center, as we saw, it's the last true monopoly and acts as an impartial policeman of the power system. It again takes time. And there are IT automation, communication, skill upgradation, modeling and simulation, and certified operators. People must have confidence in the operator and they must be certified. Harmonizing and hand-holding of different load dispatch centers through forum of load dispatch centers. And then data. Governance of data is also a subject which needs to be addressed in India too. It's a problem throughout the world, but must be recognized for Indian also system. There must be performance evaluation. There should be no unbridled power. And then there should be benchmarking and rewards. Unfortunately, in this ICPS, we had the LDC Excellence Award. Now, the democratic governance is doing what your people want, not just what you want from your people. So we must understand what the players want for governing. Now we have moved to cross-border. It's another notch high. Governance of cross-border interconnection is even more complex because of the law being different for different countries, their aspiration being different from different countries. Over the last decade, we have now guidelines for import-export, we have regulation on import-exports, and Central Electricity Authority procedures for approval, and then procedures by National Load Dispatch Center. There are layers again as far as cross-border is concerned. There is joint operating committee, joint working committee, joint steering committee, and one has to understand the different dynamics of different power system. NSOE is an example where they get directions from European Union. Then again, it is said that I believe that as a part of good governance, all agencies should be reviewing regulations and cleaning up those that may be outdated, redundant, or unnecessary. With time, things change, and we need to revisit and shed those regulations which have served their purpose and need to be gracefully retired. Very soon, we would have OSOWOG, one sun, one world, one grid. But soon, when I say it will take a couple of decades or by even half a century, but it would happen. Even SERC grid would happen, and a lot of governance issues will have to be addressed. Just a glimpse of that is, let's say, market coupling. Market coupling is not a technical challenge, it's a governance challenge. How would there be oversight? What would be the responsibilities of a power exchange? What would be the responsibility of the system operator? What functions would be performed by whom? And which functions will be coupled? And all these things have to gel well. Democracy, good governance, and modernity cannot be imported or imposed from outside a country. We have to find our own way of governance. Even terminologies, I tell you, outsider, if he comes, it will take him months to understand the terminology, like learning a language of a country. So governance requires all these issues. So finally, let me talk of key takeaways. Key takeaways are organizational engineering plays an important role in sectoral development. We have all kinds of engineering, but organizational engineering is a topic by itself. Branch and grow, grow and branch. The governance and institutions grow and branch out and again grow. But timing is important. We cannot branch out too many in the initial stages. At the same time, we cannot avoid branching out for decades together. Then again, the purpose is not served. Building institutions would take time and persistent efforts. You require champions. The way you need leaders in society, you need good politicians, good leaders. Similarly, in power systems, you need leaders. Faculty of governance in power system needs to be developed in academia too, is my strong view. Every problem it appears gets converted into a technical problem in terms of equations, in terms of analytical capabilities, but many of them are governance issues. So neither a governance issue should be converted into a technical problem, nor a technical problem should be passed on as a governance issue. Understanding the difference between the two requires wisdom, requires maturity. There is a need for institutions, systems, and processes to lubricate the whole system. There has to be emphasis on local rules codes too, and procedures in the academics course curriculum is highly recommended. All laws are as good as the way they are implemented. The need to develop culture of compliance is the core. We have laws, rules, but nobody abides by it. Then it's of no use. Same is with power system. Writing few A4 size regulations or standards is not enough. How do we ensure that everybody, like a civilized citizen, follows them with true spirit? Now, radical low carbon technological changes would have massive impact, political, economical, and social power structures, and greater democratization. Governance would become even more of a challenge. So debate over the governance of electricity are moving beyond the dichotomy of state versus market to include competition between different scales and configuration of centralized and decentralized electricity. Both would coexist. It's not centralized or decentralized. It is centralized and decentralized. Good governance, safety, a chance to grow economically and professionally. Those are important things, and governance will take care of this. Let me conclude. Before that, I have tried to put good references for those who want to get deeper into it. Some of them are excellent. Governance and regulation of power pools and system operations, way back in 90s. Similarly, governance structure of independent system operators, lessons from the frontier lines, and ADB reports. Prayas Pune has done excellent work on this. There are many who have worked on that, and ResearchGate is full of governance of the electricity sector. and the World Resource Institute, CEW, and CGRE itself has a lot of reports on governance aspects, and RECI reports, guidelines for the pooling of resources of the interconnected electricity power systems, are all very, very educative, very informative, and need to be understood. So before I come to the last slide, let me say, we cannot be mere consumers of good governance. We must be participants. We must be co-creators. It's rather unfortunate that when a regulation is made, there are hardly any representation. There is hardly any debate, informed debate, and the regulation is made. And then we say that the regulations are not good. But that's not good. We must participate. We must be co-creators and realize and recognize that governance is an important part of power system. Of course, physical systems, technical aspects, and economical aspects, and all those things are important. But governance is no less important. So let me conclude. Engineers like to operate sophisticated power system. Economists like to think about optimal incentives. Lawyers like to write rules and agreements. Power sector reform brings all of them into close contact, but none of them can succeed at their chosen task unless they work together in designing sustainable institutions who will govern the power system. Thank you very much. I am open for discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Okay, Shrishti. So thank you.
Would you like me to read the questions or?
No, I can see the questions. I'll take care of those. Yeah, I can see. Okay. Yeah, I'll take care of those questions, Shrishti. No problems. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you, Soni Saab. I must have heard you umpteen number of times, and every time it's a new learning, and one gets the new ideas. And again, this subject itself is not so simple, but the way, in a very lucid manner, you explain the things very clearly. You explained the difference between the governance and regulation. You attributed the needs. What are the needs for that? What is the good governance, bad governance? All those things very clearly you have explained. There are 4 questions are there. We'll take those questions. But since we have another 20 minutes with us, maybe I can also steal a couple of minutes before I go to the questions. Shashi, don't worry, I'll take care. I'll complete all those questions. Okay. So Soni Saab, what I would like to further view is like you have, of course, very clearly the things have been explained. But I know under your direct intervention on supervision, a number of institutions have been started in the power sector. I'll start with FOLD. I'll start with the certification for the operators. I'll say the PPSA or the LDC award, which have even we have viewed. So what type of governance has gone into these things? All these, because building an institution, I know it's a hell of a job. It's not so simple. And these 4 institutions in the power sector, these institutions have been initiated. So what, and since you were directly involved with that, so what type of governance, how you correlate the good governance aspect in starting 1 or 2 or any of these institutions? Soni Saab, to you.
Thank you, Agarwal sir. Your questions are always very tough to answer. So let me take it like this, if you are seriously interested in good governance and good for the society, then we must have open mind. Consultation after consultation. You should be prepared to listen to all kinds of voices. If everybody is thinking alike, that means nobody is thinking. You go with some ideas, and when you come out of that meeting, you should be able to change your ideas. Then only you can build institutions. The unfortunate part is that we try to push our idea. That doesn't work. Finally, satyameva jayate. What is right will only survive. I should be prepared to change my idea. So if you are building up an institution, you should have extensive consultation, go to different stakeholders, listens to everybody's viewpoint, and also the technical side, the economist's perspective, lawyer's perspective, and the civil society in general. I think they are the best to guide you in building an institution. So this is in very nutshell I would like to express. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the questions. There are 4 questions are there. One is from, first question is from Karan from IIT Kharagpur. In good governance, we talk about transparency. By what degree the Indian power system can be transparent to the public?
Yeah. So Karan, he's a young PhD scholar from Kharagpur. They are the future. And Karan, the issue is, transparency is good, but it has a limitation. You can't, become nude in the name of transparency. So certain things, society does not want it to be disclosed. For example, if I am going for a trade, I need not disclose my price, my internal strategies. And the regulation should say what is to be disclosed, what is not to be disclosed. It's again a question of maturity. And what is decided to be made transparent must be made transparent. What is decided not to be made transparent should not be made transparent. So coming to the point, see, nowadays, whenever there is any regulation made, we try to introduce a section that what all data should be put on the website. Who will put it? How long will they be kept? Where would they be archived? All these things are declared upfront so that during the execution, there is no wavering. In fact, one should go a step forward, and the regulation should also say what would not be made available to public. So this is how, in general, one has to look at it. The voracious the voracious appetite for data will keep increasing. Dil mange more, the more I get, the more I want. And that's the good thing about it. So transparency would be a big subject. And in fact, we need a regulation on data. I am a strong believer that it's a delayed one. I've been trying to pursue with every policymakers, the regulators, and everyone that we need a regulation on data, that who will keep what data and who will display what and how the whole transparency will be maintained. That would be because there wisdom lies there, and that's not getting trapped. So this is a very clumsy answer to a very focused question by a young researcher. Thank you.
Okay, I think Karan, you are happy with the answer. Okay. And then there is another question from Shrishti. How can we make interaction between consumer and governance better?
Yeah, Shrishti. So you are again another research scholar from IIT Kharagpur. The question is, I want to say something and I want Modi ji to listen to me straight. Is it possible? Not possible. Because he has so many issues, but there are ways to do it. There are websites, there are consultations, and someday your voice would reach there, maybe in a filtered way, and things like that. So a consumer, that is why there are consumer forums, there are ombudsman, these are the institutions. At least one can write, I remember one of my chief engineer during 70s used to say, Soni, you have an idea? Yes, sir, I have an idea, but kaun sunega, sir? So he used to keep postcards in his pocket during those days. He will say, look, now this is the postcard. I will fill the address. You write whatever and put it in the red box. It will reach somewhere. So we should have the courage and initiative to put our suggestions. It may not be, you can't expect that it will be always heard, but these all would be heard in the, nowadays we have public hearing during any making of the regulation. The procedure is that it is open to public. Please join. As a student, you should join the public hearing. It's such a great learning. I never try to miss a public hearing because you learn. Hundreds of people speak and you try to understand. So as a consumer, we should be more active and give our ideas. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Soni Saab, now there are two, in fact, Suresh D. Vadvarkar, he has given two questions. I'll combine those because one is statement only. He says, governance is captured in standard operating procedure. Am I correct? He's asking you. Then another thing is, it is difficult to ensure human integrity. Is it difficult to ensure human integrity?
Very matured questions and very difficult questions. See, integrity again is something, it lies in the eyes of the beholder. The measurements are not that yet pakka, of these things. But it's a matter of culture. You will find that if you are groomed well, you can be reasonably confident that he will not do something which is not ethical. So that's the maturity of the society. For example, we know that in the world, there are certain countries where certain people will not do much wrong because they have a conscience, they have been built accordingly. That's why, the maturity level matters. So integrity is important. And I believe that is the development of human society, that's the development of power system. For example, in power system, if somebody's fault right through is not working, he should have the courage to say that mine is not working, I have problems. So it's okay, people should accept and then try to correct it. So that's how I would look. Was the second part of the question. What was the first part, Agarwal sir?
First part was basically what he said was, governance is captured in standard operating procedures. Am I correct?
No, I'm not very confident that whether the operating procedures would capture the entire governance is the full thing, how you got the powers to write down the procedures, who gave you that, how were all these things approved. This whole process is governance, not the procedure at all. The procedure, is converting everything into black and white, that this is right, this is wrong, thou shall not do this, thou shall do this. But that's not governance. The governance can change the procedures if they feel so. Somebody can trigger that, yes, we found it and it is not working well. So standard operating procedures is a very small component of this entire jigsaw puzzle of governance. See, we have policymakers, we have policies, then regulations, then rules, laws, orders, and then finally the procedure. So, but procedure is a very small component and it can be taken as a governance.
Okay, great.
There's another question, sir.
Yes, Rashti.
Yeah, in cross-border transactions, what are the changes or effects did you observe during COVID-19? And what are the measures taken for it?
Yeah, so for example, see, during such low probability, high impact events and such pandemics, certainly people start looking inwards. That's first thing, because safety and human life is the topmost thing. As engineers, we know that first the human life, then the equipment life, and then rest of the things. So during COVID, the best part was that everywhere in the world, power system operators and all the stakeholders rose to the occasion and supply was maintained. That was one point agenda, that ensure uninterrupted supply to the consumer. And why was it? Because the demand may be falling, the total consumption may be going down, but the value of electricity was very high. It was literally going, the last unit going through the ventilator, so many oxygen plants. And I know my colleagues in the load dispatch centers monitoring every oxygen plant in the country. I could have never imagined, but that's what is, was done. So during COVID-19, the priorities were different. The backup concept got changed and people were, doing from inside how to become more resilient. As far as the cross-border is concerned, that was also continuing, not that the links were open, links continued. And the one good thing the COVID taught us, that there was excellent cooperation amongst everyone. And we learned how to use other methods and technologies and all that. So no untoward things in COVID-19. That's the best part of the whole thing. Thank you.
Srishti,
Sir, can
how
I
much?
have one more question, sir, please? If is it okay?
Okay.
Sir, Yes, sir. I wanted to know about like the different regulation standards and other things are discussed in the academia, and the people will study and have research, and they'll come up with some solutions. So when these solutions are implemented in the grid societies or like the work which is going on in the research field.
Means whatever the solutions are there from the academia, are they going to be implemented? Are they implementing?
See, the question must be reframed. I mean, that's again part of the governance. All what I say must be implemented, then only I will say is not the right way. See, we researchers, academia's job is to write, to analyze, give pros and cons, the advantage, disadvantage, and then depending on the circumstances, some are accepted, some are accepted at a later date, and it will depend. But certainly, what is done at the research level is at certain TRL, and when it comes to industry, it has to be well proven. It has to be TRL 9, and I heard someone today morning that in the TRL 1 to TRL 9, there are death valleys. A concept starts with TRL 1, works very fine up to TRL 4, and then there is a death valley, and then it dies and it cannot reach TRL 9. If those are the kind of ideas, they will not be implemented by industry, because when you implement in industry, the stakes are extremely high. You're talking of security, safety of the grid. The economics comes into play. So industry is a very ruthless place and tough place. Before implementing, people will look at it from all sides and then only check and then only implement.
Sorry, sir, there are two more questions have come up at the last minute.
Please.
Srishti, we can go for another couple of minutes, I think, because your clock is showing another 5-6 minutes. So it
yes,
is
sir.
25 plus. Okay, so quickly we'll take the questions. One is from Kuldeep. You mentioned about one word, one sun, one grid. For this mission, what is the main challenge behind this? Governance or technology? Please explain.
Yeah. So, technology has improved a lot. Now, HVDC, even our country itself has got a dozen HVDCs. Now, light HVDC, VSCs, and submarine cables have coming up. So, technology, I would say, is much matured. We know how to build 765 kV lines, even 100 kV lines have been tested in India itself. So technology side is relatively easy. It is the finance which is a little difficult. You need money to invest, but that also is not a very difficult thing. But what is difficult is actually coming to a consensus, the political commitment, and building other institutions where the policymakers of the either side, the regulators of the either side arrive at some consensus, the common minimum program and common ground, and then it can be taken forward. But one thing is certain, that future people would connect more and more. And I always give an example. In 1980s, in one of the conferences, we said when there were 40 frequencies in the India that there should be an all India grid, we were ridiculed. That do you know how much money is required and how is it possible and all that? Because at that time there was no 400 kV also in the country. But today we have thousands of 765 kVs and 400 kV lines, and now the grid is one. So similarly, the neighbors will connect. That's for sure, and it will move forward. So it's, I would say, yes, it is more of a governance issue than technology issues.
Sonisa, one is there, I think, but it is more towards technical side. It is from Mr. Kishore. What is the important current technical challenge by Indian power system?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge is all our experience of past is not helping us anymore. We know thermal, we know hydro, we know consumer, how will he behave, but we don't know how the prosumer of tomorrow will behave. I don't know, once you have PV, then how would your load, would you cook in the evening or would you cook in the afternoon? Would you use a refrigerator? How will you use? And similarly, the generation side, the new technologies which are coming up, the storage, still the gender is not defined of storage. How will it behave? We just don't know. So, you know, the both sides, consumer is changing, the generation supply side is changing, and the power system operators or everybody, including regulator, has to understand how these things are going to evolve. So what we have learned in 100 years is good, but it will not be good enough for us to peep into the future. When the consumer behavior is changing, and it has always been changing, but the changes are now very fast. So that's the point.
Thank
Hope
you,
it
Soni
makes
Saab.
sense.
I think we can keep on going for the time because time is over, and really it was very interesting. And I will suggest the young engineers or the students from the IIT Kharagpur is sometimes you should call Soni Saab for half a day or day and learn, because I can see the interest and the type of questions which I've been pouring in. So I once again thank Soni Saab for this wonderful talk, and all of us enjoyed it really very well. And I now hand it over to Srishti to do the rest.
Thank you so much for an engaging session, sir. It was a beautiful correlation even with the human society and with the electrical grid, and what are the way you said about the governance. It was a very good session, sir, and we had a good Q&A. I would like to thank you for being a very nice, your wise words, sir. And I'll thank Chair Mr. Viren Kumar Agrawal, sir, for being the chair. And for any more questions, the people can go in the networking launch. There are, sir, you can also go there, and there might be a question, so you can answer them. And the networking launch will be available for the 3 days. And the next session for invited paper and contributory paper will happen in this hall from 1:20. So the schedule will be posted in this session for the next 10 minutes. Then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Agarwal sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you, Srishti. Thank you, Karan. And thank you all the attendees. I know that there may be attendees who have joined through portal. They might have posed the questions which have not filtered out and come to us. So I would request the service providers to take care of these things. I have faced this in all the sessions I have attended, and I have gone to the lounge, and there are robots who keep on replying that, yes, somebody will come and reply, but nobody replies. I will again go there. Take care. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.